Okay, so the Virtual Console was a service on the Wii, Wii U, and 3DS that allowed you to play older Nintendo games on newer Nintendo systems. Everyone loved the Virtual Console as you were able to play the best classic Nintendo games for cheap prices. Then along came the Nintendo Switch, and the Virtual Console was nowhere to be seen, and instead we got the Nintendo Switch Online service as a bad substitute to the Virtual Console. So the question that is, will the Virtual Console return, has been asked by everyone, and so in this video I will be answering that question. Alright, so no, the Virtual Console will not come to the Nintendo Switch. So if you just clicked on this video because you wanted to know if I thought the Virtual Console would return or not, then there's your answer. So if that's all you wanted to know, then you can click off the video, but if you want to know why I think the Virtual Console isn't going to return, then keep watching. So back in September of 2018, the awful service that is the Nintendo Switch Online service was released. Along with the release of the Nintendo Switch Online service came a library of NES games. At release, there were 20 NES games available for you to play, but over time the library of NES games kept growing and growing. At this point in time, there are 58 NES games that you can play whenever you want. Then in September of 2019, everyone that had a Nintendo Switch Online membership got access to a library of 20 SNES games on top of the NES games. Then over time we kept on getting more and more SNES games, and right now as I'm recording this video, we have access to 48 games that originally released on the SNES. So if my calculations are correct, through the Nintendo Switch Online service alone, we can play 106 games from the NES and SNES, which is quite a lot of games. Now you can't argue that Nintendo would be making much more money if they were to just release NES and SNES games on a Virtual Console, instead of releasing them through the Switch's online service. By paying $20 Australian for a yearly online membership, you're getting access to over 100 games, which is really cheap. Even though some of the games aren't too good, it's still 100 games. If Nintendo were to just release some SNES and NES games for $10 on a Virtual Console, they would be making much more money. So it would just make sense for the NES and SNES games to be available through a Virtual Console. But the NES and SNES games are a big selling point for the Switch's online service, which puts Nintendo in a weird spot, as they could be making more money if there was a Virtual Console, but without the NES and SNES games on the Switch's online service, they wouldn't be selling the online service. Here's where it gets even trickier though. The two systems that people want to come to the Nintendo Switch Online service the most are the Nintendo 64 and the Game Boy, or the Game Boy family of systems if you want to be specific. But these systems just aren't going to release on the Nintendo Switch Online service, as Nintendo would miss out on too much money. Let me explain. Nintendo 64 games are worth more than the price of the Nintendo Switch Online service. End of explanation. Then if the Virtual Console was a thing, Nintendo would be missing out on too much money if N64 games were available for let's say $15 or $20 each, as Nintendo knows that they could release a really lazy collection of 3 or 4 Nintendo 64 games and sell it for the price of a modern game. Then with the Game Boy games, while their graphics don't quite hold up, the gameplay does. And so all of the Game Boy games could very well just get HD remakes, like how the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening got a HD remake. Nintendo wouldn't put out Game Boy games on a Virtual Console, knowing that if they just slapped a HD coated paint on them, that they could be sold for full price. So ultimately, the reason we don't have a Virtual Console on the Switch is because of money and that Nintendo are greedy. And with all that said, it's basically the end of the video. Let me know in the comments if you think the Virtual Console will return, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more Nintendo content, and thank you for watching.